Hey everyone, Sherwood Small Pets here, and I'm here with Little John. Robin Hood is getting some senior alone time away from his giant potato son slash brother slash child slash partner. Their relationship's an odd one, but they've been together for 4.5 years now, so I'd say whatever it is they're doing, it's working. So LJ is one of my longest running residents. We've had him since he was 2 weeks old, which is way too young. He is a product of an experimental litter between a skinny pig and a regular guinea pig. And so I thought he'd be the perfect, actually, my husband, Mr. Sherwood, actually thought he'd be the perfect pig to be out here talking about this topic because technically he shouldn't exist. Now, I will show you. I'm going to take his tent off for a second. It doesn't look it, but LJ is 4.5 pounds. He's not a little pig by any means. And now he makes himself disappear. And we're back. Anyway, today's video is going to be about how to spot a backyard breeder, and on the flip side of that, how to spot an ethical breeder. Because the two are not the same, and unfortunately, far too often, especially in the small pet community, well, actually, you know what? Since the emergence of things like Craigslist and Kijiji, all pets seem to be, we're losing the divide between an ethical breeder and a backyard breeder slash like mill provider, basically. And I just thought I would point out how to tell the difference, because as soon as you see a cute baby on something like Kijiji, your heart automatically starts like bleeding for it. And the problem is if you quote, rescue from one of these places, you're just making room for another one. So without further ado, let's talk about the differences between backyard and ethical breeders. Want that? It's right here. Yum, 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 yum. Snacks, snacks, snacks. Little John didn't get big all by himself. Anyway, so if you are looking at a breeder and you're wondering whether or not they're a backyard breeder or not, these are some of the things to look for. A backyard breeder will speak about animals as stock, or as like an itemized, categorized property, not, their own animals. They'll have things like flash weekend sales in their advertisements, or like 2 for the price of 1, or must go because I have more litters coming sales. An ethical breeder would not have those. They also won't show their setups or their diets that they feed. Or if they do show you their setups, the setups are really crappy, and they'll use the excuse like, oh, we just have a lot of babies right now, so that's why we're feeding this, or that's why they're living in this. That's not an excuse. They always have babies available, and maybe the first time you even saw the ad, it was advertised as almost like an accidental litter, and all of a sudden that same address or those same pictures are popping up a lot. Perfect example is if for a hamster, they've always got like 20 and 30 or even over 10 babies available all the time. That should set up all your warning flags. They also wouldn't have a kennel or a caviary or a hamstery or rabbitry name, or website or any kind of social media platforms. They only advertise on Kijiji. That's not to say that good breeders don't sometimes use Kijiji, like if they have older like litter mates that haven't been adopted or haven't been sold yet, but it's not their primary place of advertisement. You know what I mean? Like, for example, Remus is from Concord Ridge Leon Burgers, so they have a site, a Facebook, everything, and it's that's the kennel name. Or our friends have Mustachio, Hamstery, and Strong Brew Hamsters. Those are actual established names, and that may sound like a small detail, but it's pretty telling, because if somebody's investing their time and their money into bettering a species or bettering a breed, then they want it branded. This is their dedication. They won't ask you any questions. They'll just say, like, how many do you want? And you can tell them, and you can show up, pay the money, and you will get whatever animal it is you want. They don't have any kind of wait list or application. They don't have a take back policy. So if you say something happens, they won't say, like, we'll take our animal back. It's basically you're on your own, find a shelter. And you won't have any kind of pedigree or paperwork. Now, on the flip side of that, what to look for in an ethical breeder is they will have an application and a wait list. Not every single litter is always going to be 100% spoken for, but as a rule, there's not going to be a lot of animals all the time that need homes. For example, because there are so few good breeders for hamsters, and Leonbergers actually, in Ontario and in Canada in general, Julie and Kay both have extremely long wait lists for hamsters, and our breeder, Cindy, she always has a long wait list for puppies. And similarly to good guinea pig breeders, there's always a wait list. Sure, sometimes there's more available because some people want more of one sex than the other, but as a rule, there's some kind of wait list, and there's usually an application. They're going to welcome questions, like they want you to ask them questions because they're giving you one of their babies, you know? They're going to ask you more questions than you could probably think to ask them. With Cindy, when we got Remus, it was like an hour and a half long phone call before we were invited to even come meet the dogs. Whoops, where'd your tent go? But it was long. She asked us a lot of specific questions, and that's on top of a questionnaire and application. Now, not every ethical breeder is going to have an application and a bunch of questions, but generally speaking, they're going to ask you questions because they want to know where their animal's going. They're usually going to ask about what their living situation is going to be, what kind of food. They'll have you agree to not breed them unless you're in some kind of breeding contract. And they're going to have a take back policy. So if something happens, somebody dies, somebody gets sick, they're going to say, please don't bring our animal to a shelter. We will take them back. No questions. We'll take them, right? And that's what you want. A good breeder isn't always pumping out babies. Now, sometimes there will be baby booms where there's more than one litter at a time, but that's just the way, biology works. But generally speaking, they're not constantly pumping out babies. So you can't, there's not just babies made to order, They'll have an established kennel name, generally speaking, because again, they're proud of what they've done. They've got exemplary housing and a great diet, because if you want your animals to do well, and if you want your animals to last, and if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as an ethical breeder, you're trying to better the species or the breed of animal that you're breeding. So diet is a huge part of that. So you want to ask them what they're feeding, and they're going to ask you what you plan to feed their animal. But those are the glaring differences between a backyard breeder and an ethical breeder, and it's very, very important that we understand that there's a difference. Ethical breeders are essential to the survival of any species of domesticated animal. It's just a fact. We need people dedicated to the betterment of breeds and species, otherwise we'll end up losing them. And I'm totally down with adoption. We all know this, that I am. However, I am also 100% for well-bred and pedigreed animals, because we need both, And I just think it's essential that we understand that there's a difference. Too many places, too many shelters, too many rescues lump backyard breeders and ethical breeders in as the same thing. They're not cut from the same cloth. So super important to understand those differences. That's pretty much it. I'll leave a list of good ethical breeders for all the different species that I house in my description box. So that way you can see what different species of ethical breeders look like. The breeders themselves are all humans, but breeders of different species. There we go. It's late. I'm tired. But that way you can check out their websites, check out their stuff, and you can see the difference. Anyways, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed seeing LJ. Anyways, be good to one another. I'll see you all real soon. Take care, everyone.